background is having been a criminal defense attorney for, 11 years, 12 years, and then going to the ACLU of Washington, where I'm still the drug policy director. But this year, the ACLU of Washington made me an in-kind contribution to the New Approach Washington campaign, which is the campaign that has filed a full legalization initiative, Initiative 502, which is an initiative to the legislature. It'll go in front of the Washington State Legislature in January. They may pass it. If they do, we celebrate, we go home. But assuming that they don't, it will then go on to the November 2012 ballot and be put to the voters. Here, and just following up on the same observations that David and Dale have already made, is that we are in this amazing moment of opportunity and also precariousness. There is no state in the country that has over 55, maybe on a good day, 56% support for majority support for legalizing marijuana. And of course, it depends on how you ask the question. And then once you start to drill down into a more specific proposal, the support gets a little bit softer. Right now here in Washington, we've got 54% support for some very specific proposals that have been tested that track pretty closely to what the ballot title and the ballot summary for I-502 is. But 54% is not a huge majority. What we all know is that for many, many years, 75% of the American public has said that the war on drugs is a failure. Zogby poll tells us that all the time. What we don't have is a majority support for the answer. The answer is what scares people. The answer is where you have to nail down the details. The answer is what happened with Proposition 19. They had great support going into a year out before it got to the ballot, and they did a great job with how much erosion of support they had. To come in at 46% was great for California in an off year. But people started to get really scared when they started to look at the details, when they started to try to figure out how it was actually going to be implemented. There wasn't a statewide regulatory system. They weren't sure how that was going to work. And people started to talk about scary things like stone drivers. And we saw that the people that should have been with us, setting aside for a moment the whole Emerald Triangle, Humboldt County issue, but we saw the people that we should have had, the moderate Democrats, the conservative Democrats, the college-educated women, the independents, we saw their support peel off at the end, right before. And here in Washington, our public opinion research identifies the exact same people as being the people who are our soft supporters. Our soft supporters are those conservative to moderate Democrats, college-educated women, mothers, and independents. And if you address their concerns, you can hold on to them. But that is a very difficult thing to do. That is a difficult needle to thread. And so with I-502, we spent a lot of time figuring out what is the most conservative, safe, secure-sounding marijuana legalization initiative that we can draft, and what will get us closest to what our public opinion research tells us people will hang on to and pass. Some of you are probably familiar with Nate Silver's meta-analysis of national polling on support for marijuana legalization in the country. And you saw that back in the 70s, we made so much progress in changing our marijuana laws. We had 12 states pass decriminalization laws back in the 70s. And then the 80s came, and you can see the support go in the opposite direction very quickly. And now we're getting back closer, and in 2009, you look at Nate Silver's graph of support versus opposition for marijuana legalization, and we are this close to the tipping point. This close. And 2012 could be the year when some state, maybe 2 states, maybe 3 states, has just enough to push the rock over the top of the mountain, and people will see that the sky doesn't fall, and we're able to get momentum to make better and better marijuana laws. But how you get that rock over the top of the mountain that's where the devil is in the details. So I'm sure we're gonna talk about the devil's in the details of I-502. I know that people have a lot of concerns about some of the things that are there, but I'm here to tell you that what we all need to be thinking about, most importantly, is how do we hold on to the 54%? Is that even possible? And can we push something that at its core it's legalization of marijuana for adults. Because if we can just get the ball on the other side, and I don't know how many different metaphors here, but if we can just get past that hurdle, we can fix a lot afterwards. But we are still, right now, here in Washington, it's still a misdemeanor to possess marijuana, and it carries a mandatory 24 hours in jail and a $250 fine, and it can mess with your federal financial aid. And those of us who live here in Seattle think that we're fine, but you go to Klickitat County and it's a completely different experience. So that's where we're coming from with New Approach Washington I-502, is that we see that there's a possibility, but we think it's a very slim possibility, and we have to do everything and be as disciplined as possible. And pulling together, for example, the sponsors that signed on to it: Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes, former U.S. Attorney John McKay, Rick Steves, 2 medical doctors, 2 former Washington State Bar presidents, a Washington State legislator. We need all the mainstream messengers possible, because I think a legalization initiative that looks like it's coming from the choir, that looks like it's coming from the usual suspects, has a much harder row to hoe than one that's coming from a former U.S. attorney, for example. So that's kind of the big overview of where our head is right now and what we're hoping to get accomplished within the next 15 months.